We are live.
Yep,
You're good.
Live, do you want to start the comments?
Am I welcome to the workshop this afternoon. And further ado, I'm probably handing over to you to lead us into the meeting, so all is yours.
Kia ora, good afternoon, everybody. As we workshop with council previously this year, LGNZ have released the 2025 scanning orders for the coming year. Each triennium council needs to adopt scanning orders, and we asked you whether you would like to workshop scanning orders because there's some decisions that need to be made about what's in and what's not, or some particular decisions for specific matters in the standing orders. You've elected to do that prior to the new triennium of council. So we're just going to walk you through that today. Hopefully we won't be an hour and a half, but we're happy to answer any questions that you've got on the way through. So I'll hand over to Paula at this point. Thank you, Paula.
Good afternoon, everybody. So you would have seen from the agenda the purpose for the workshop, which has just actually gone through. What I'll actually add to that is the direction that we're looking for today is the guidance on your preference with regards to options for the 2025 standing orders, and also the confirmation on whether the adoption of the new standing orders should be completed prior to the end of the triennium. So that's what we're really looking for as an outcome today from the workshop. I've got a little presentation to help us work through the documents themselves. What you have in front of you is a large A3 table that actually describes the options that we need to review, and I've collated some information on pros and cons around some of the options. I've also stated in that table what's in the current standing orders. So we're working from the 2019 version of the standing orders at the moment, and we're trying to update ourselves to 2025. So there's a little few changes. So I've quickly popped us through a presentation to say what those changes look like. So our key changes is understanding actually our implications of the meeting procedures and member conduct. And that's our direction that we're looking for from the workshop today. So the first major change that's happened from the 2019 template to the 2025 template is they have actually enhanced the principal section, and that is now actually being brought right to the front of the standing order template document. And that is actually sitting right on page 3 and 4 of the new template if you wanted to actually have a look at that. The reason that that's actually being enhanced, and they're really wanting to actually emphasise that, is to actually make sure there's good transparency, confidentiality, and it's actually easier for the public to actually understand access. And it sets that tone of being respectful and making sure that we're inclusive with our governance. So the next major change is the fact that they've actually changed the way they've actually had their language written. They've actually really tried to actually make it very plain English. So it's easier to understand both for us as the governance and for the community. The next change is your audio visual participation, which is standing order 13.7. At the moment, with regards to our current standing orders, it states in our current standing orders that if somebody participates via audio and audio visual, that person is not actually counted as part of the quorum. So going forward in the new template, it is stated that they will be counted as part of the quorum, and we need to actually decide whether that's exactly what we want to do. It is part of legislation now. Any standing order in the template, you'll notice in the standing orders there are some standing orders that actually have a reference to legislation under the standing order. Those standing orders cannot be changed. It's part of legislation. So casting vote, we currently have casting vote for our chair under Standing Order 19.3, that allows the chair to actually make the casting vote if there's actually a tie. What I'll actually point out in our current standing orders is we have the note under that standing order that this actually only applies to any decisions that are strategic decisions, for example, our LTP decisions, annual plan, annual report, etc., maybe around policies and plans. If we actually incorporate that clause, you need to give us direction whether you want to maintain that note around the strategic decisions only.
Do we have to identify them beforehand? What are those strategic decisions, or we just wait until it comes up, we make a determination?
That's probably something I can't answer for you right now, but I would say we'd actually put a protocol around it. Would be the best thing is actually have a good discussion about that and say, yes, do we want that in a protocol so we can refer to that and actually state these are the strategic decisions.
Has it ever happened, Nicole, on your watch?
It's never happened, I think, since I've been in the building, but in the past, we've always had that rider in it that would only be used if it was, the deadline for an LTP or an annual plan, but not just having the ability I've always believed that you better to revisit if it's that finally split 50-50, we need to take more time and go there. That's what new council's always got to make the decision on going forward as to whether you use that pack.
So
Jeremy.
No, I was just saying, obviously, I know the other councils 2 times in this term that the mayor's used casting vote, even the Gore district, just to get the rubbish, sort out the rubbish, the mayor, because that was his thing he voted on or got voted in, recycling or something around that. And but it was one of those things, well, half your stone, half your don't, you should be able to sort this out. But he made a personal decision to do, his vote. And then I know the other one may have been the amalgamation discussion. He used to cast a vote to accept the report about amalgamation, from what I know, which is there are a couple of topics that I don't know whether they would fall into this sort of category.
I suspect all the territorials are on that 50-50, and they can use it.
Yeah.
We've had examples with all 3 where the mayor's use the casting vote to get something through.
Can I just say, maybe on those core functional things of the council, we identify those things, annual, long-term plan, and there'll be some others. But Jeremy's example of doing with the rubbish, using that, surely this is what we've done in the past since I've been here and since you've been chairing. It becomes, say that it's a bit split, that feels that way. We go back and we work on the question again until we get some sort of consensus. We should continue with that process, one would think. Is the hardest way, but it's the best way. I think instead of pulling out an extra vote, it's just an idea.
Regional councils where the council elects the chair, I think it's more important that you have a majority where the mayors all feel that they've got a mandate and are prepared to use it. So it's a slightly different situation.
I think that in that case, really, I think the responsibility of the chairperson is to maintain the status quo.
Yeah.
Because it's so split. So that's just that's not a mandatory thing, but I think it would be the normal practice.
Yeah, there's been cases with our cousins where it's definitely like using a casting vote to buy a building. It's not status quo, I wouldn't have thought. Nobby did one a few months ago where it was probably, this was status quo. Yeah.
But anyway, this says that the chairman can use a casting vote and it doesn't qualify it at all. So.
Can I just ask why in the options table it says casting vote for chairs, plural? Is that going to apply at committee level as well as council level?
I think that's just chairs. No.
Chairs recurring over the years.
It doesn't mean the chairs of the committee.
Right,
It's just the chair. And yeah, to actually bringing you to the table, there is a pros and cons around which way we go. I think it's really important that you actually have a wee look at the pros and cons. And really with regards to that statutory requirement, it's around the timeframes that we actually have to meet. So it actually, if there's delays around decisions, it could actually delay things around the LTP hitting its correct timeframes and the annual plan hitting its correct timeframes with regards to our processes. So it's just allowing that. I mean, in the cons table, we do actually say it may be perceived as giving too much power to the chairperson. Or it could lead to that dissatisfaction among the members that the vote's less impactful. So you do need to consider that and how the council may work together going forward. So actually need to go back one. There's also, we just need to readdress our framework around motions and amendments and the fact that there's 3 different options around how we work with that and how we actually work with debate and discussion. We currently work with option B. So there's option A, B and C. Option A, which is actually on page 65 to 67 of the standing order template. That is the most formal process for working through motions and amendments. What I will say with regards to that is it's very formal, it can be very restrictive, and it can be time consuming. And the chair has to be very much on board with the process as it goes through and that we don't miss part of the process. So it can be quite complicated. Option B is formal, but a little bit more less formal. It allows a little bit of debate and people can actually speak more than once. That is the actual option that we work with now. Option B may actually extend the time of your meeting because there's a little bit more discussion and conversation. And there's not that strict structure around you've spoken, you can't speak again. And then there's option C, which is a bit of a free-for-all, to put it politely. It allows a lot of discussion. It will lengthen out your meetings and it lessens the control of the chairperson. So it's just actually having probably a really good read of the template document and the guidance document to understand the 3 different options and actually decide whether you want to stay with what we do now versus do we want to make it more structured and controlled, or do we want it actually more free-flowing where everybody has an opportunity to keep coming back to the discussion.
So Paula, there, just to be clear, there are different options. I always assumed it was the style of the chair that determined those options really in the style of the council. So we're actually choosing one.
It's your decision as the council which option you choose to work with.
I think, can you speak? I remember going through all this and working out, and B seemed to be the feel good, it seemed to a bit of flexibility, and I think it's generally, obviously, it's a fallback position too, isn't it? And if it does go back, that's how it works. But even discussing about the casting votes, I think the regional sector have got a different bit of a feel because we do pick a chair, and if things go wrong, well, they can be removed. It's trying to get everybody to buy in, and there might be 1 or 2 might not agree, but the majority are happy. We're pretty relaxed about it to make those decisions. But I remember spending a lot of time on this option A, B, C at some stage, and it just seemed natural that B seemed to be the one. It was pretty good to work with. Then it's up to the chair to decide how they want to use it and let people talk, but you can still come back and give us some guidelines, so to speak, if it does get carried away. So
I don't think we've actually formally debated it since 2019, probably when we adopted that particular version. We've got to have something in place. And I think, well, probably most of us felt that B is quite a good place to be. If the free-for-all, you can go on and on and on. At least, the chair can say, look, we're running out of time, I'm going to cut it off now. But it's normally after there's been a really good debate around the table.
Yeah, I advocate for the current system of B. The new council might come in and that style may change, but the most important thing in a meeting, as we're live streamed now, is that we've got to demonstrate the democracy in the building, and option B is the best way to do that. That will allow for councillors to walk out into the car park and feel as though they've heard the views of their constituents. Option A, it could be frustrations. People get out there and they've been cut off from saying what they need to say at a meeting. But it's worked for us really well. I think it has. And those consensus decisions. This is my view to it.
Yeah, you got to. Some of the more gnarly topics, we need to be able to work through them. And if the chair feels that the structure's about getting the meeting over and done with, we're not going to get the results we're looking for.
So, but I say something, it is hard though, because sometimes, without criticising any particular councillor, some people can get involved in the minutiae of stuff, which is not, I suppose it's the role of the chairman to try and say, well, look, let's get back onto the topic. It happens time and time again, and meetings go on far too long because of that. That's not something you can really have a rule for, but it is something that the chair, I think, needs to take responsibility for and make sure that we're discussing the topic and not getting off into some little pet project that somebody has, and that can easily happen.
I reckon those finance committee meetings should be a lot shorter.
Yeah, maybe spell checking before the meeting.
Can I just say, Morris, to that, option B does come with some risks, and you've just highlighted those. So it does come with some risks, but the rewards are far greater, in my view. And it's managing those risks. And my viewpoint, if we have to stay for an extra year to sort out issues, we stay. Who cares if it's gone past my bedtime or past my afternoon tea?
The reality,
I'm surprised in this council that we've actually kept things as tight as we can, and we haven't had massive overruns on really difficult subjects. I think we've managed that really well. But Morris, you are right. I'm not disagreeing, and you may have pointed that towards me because I tend to go on a wee bit. I know.
I was thinking of some people, but I wasn't thinking.
the reality is, though, quite often you will come into chambers after reading a paper and think, well, this will be the decision. And quite often it's completely left field to where you've landed. So you need to have that room for that discussion.
Yeah.
Only one point. Oh, sorry.
I was going to observe that it has worked well with this existing council, and it seems in recent years as well, that dynamics could change significantly post-election. We can't predict how that might turn out, and kind of speaks to maybe it's another reason why the decision on this might be deferred and taken by the next council for this very reason, that as you look around the room and go, oh, looking at the personalities, we definitely want option A, or we may actually option C is going to be needed here. It may depend on the dynamics and what you anticipate will be the type of engagement you're going to get from the type of personalities we're seeing.
So the process that I can say that would clarify that or make it easier is that we can adopt these standing orders now, but the new council will have to re-adopt.
Okay.
So if they need a change in their option, that could be considered at that time.
I'd give them a bit of time to understand and get to know each other before they make that decision. One would think, well, that's a good point.
But Jeremy
Yeah,
themselves.
one thing, and probably a wee bit of what Phil said, is when you get a whole new lot of people, there's some people who are very inexperienced, to be honest, I was the same, coming into it and working out how this system works. If you've got a real strict regime, they'll be less likely to really engage, got to make it very easy for them to, and you want them to have input. If you've got, you're not allowed to talk anymore, you've had your 2 seconds. So I think it's very important to have that flexibility, and I think that's really option B. But I think there's still enough structure in option B from what I remember, in regards to that if it does get real, you can still play the game.
At all times, you've got to have a standing orders in play. But I'm sure there's no reason why, if you've got 6 months and you have problems, you couldn't revisit. It's not set in concrete that it's just done at the start. That'd be correct, would it?
Yep, that is correct. Yes.
Alice, you were indicating?
Yeah, I was just interested in Phil's comment. I think what you might find, even if there's a new council and new councillors sitting around the table, that they'll be counselled by the senior members, and the senior members will still get the same thing in place, if you get what I mean. So at least it's discussed, I guess.
Yeah, I think you might need to have some flexibility that you would normally go with B, but if things got out of control, you could revert back to A.
I think there's a couple of things here.
I
One,
think you can do that anyway.
you know, there's the options in which you speak, but chairing a meeting, and I think the point was made by you, Morris, is a skill that sits on top of the order in which people speak and what they can speak to, etc., etc., etc. So option B is really about the order in which people speak and how they speak to points, emotions, and things. There's still quite a skill that sits at the head of each committee and subcommittee, which is controlling the meeting within the rules and the frameworks that you've got. So I think the point that you're making about having the flexibility around how you can speak to items on the table, and then having how the meeting is managed on top of that, they can coexist quite nicely together. And it's you don't necessarily have to change option B in order to have good control of a meeting, which is about the chairing.
So we can't change the option mid-discussion. If things get put an amendment up.
You can try anything if you want.
You can suspend standing orders for a meeting or during it. But I think the other consideration too, with if it's lease, you've got staff sitting here waiting to present, and they could be wasting an hour and a half with C. So it's just getting that balance, so you're not having people who know that they're going to speak in a couple of items and the items go on and on. So with new council, you will work it out.
What you're saying is not your worry.
Yeah, it's not your worries.
Good luck.
Live streaming saying, oh,
Okay, so the next change is, or not necessarily a change, but an option that we need to consider is expanding the time for deputations and petitions. And this is actually one, to allocate more time to the speakers if we decide to do that. I think currently it's 15 minutes.
10 and 10.
Yeah, so you have the option to actually make that more or less. And there's also an option in here with regards to the time frame of working days around preparing the information, if we have information that staff need to prepare to bring to the table for that. At the moment, it's currently 5 working days for staff to actually prepare that information. You can consider whether you want to extend that or shorten that. As an option.
Can we, talking about public speakers coming from the gallery and sitting here and addressing the council, is it 10 minutes in total? Was it 10 to speak and another option? Could we make a determination of the speaking and the question time following that? Because a lot of people do use up all their time to speak and get quite frustrated when they run out of time, or is it their issue to sort out their timing to have some questions? Because quite often I see councillors wanting to pick up on some points and they don't have time to do that because the speaker has chewed through all the time for the presentation that's been forwarded to us anyway. Councillors normally read all those things. So
that would be at the discretion of the chair at the time. depending on what the subject was. The person that is presenting to the council actually understands that they have an allocated time slot, and that is the time slot for that. If there were additional questions and the subject was particularly interesting, it would be at the chair's discretion to allow more time for those questions.
So
Okay, so there would change.
just an example, obviously if people, we don't have many people coming in. And the reality is an extra 5 minutes is not going to really worry the meeting through the year. And you know, if people are, we've got people that will drive, especially from their way, come down, you know, they drive an hour to come here and speak 5 minutes and drive an hour home. So I you know, if they're making an effort to come down and wanting to speak with you, want to hear them or not, or whatever you want, they should have make an effort to listen, and they go over in 5 minutes. It shouldn't be a problem. But you're saying that the chair could actually, doesn't necessarily need to stick to the 10 minutes. They can make a call on the day.
Thank you.
And at times we have let people speak for more.
Yeah, I mean, being flexible. I'm just saying that sometimes I think it's too restrictive.
Well, wouldn't it just be simpler to have an allocated time for speaking and then the allocated time for questions?
We can do that.
It's a lot cleaner, so it just means if we do have questions, boom, the presentation is shut and you can get onto those questions.
So that's exactly what the standing orders are asking for, is indicate how much time you want to actually allocate to your speaker. And that will also actually help with your committee support to be able to actually go back to the requester and say, this is what it is, this is the allocated time, and that will also help the person presenting to actually prepare themselves for that period of time. The discretion comes into it when they've had that allocated time and perhaps the chair decides that they do want to ask, you do want to ask more questions, so gives you a little bit more of an extension around your questions you actually want to ask them. But for the presenter themselves, they need an allocated time on, I've only got 15 minutes, so I have to actually make my presentation fit into that. And it also allows the people dealing with the request coming into the council that the chair's actually agreed for them to come in, and then we can say to them, you've got 15 minutes.
So my question was really about, and I've seen this before, as presenters come in and they don't want feedback on what they're presenting, they want to use it as a platform on a particular issue to give criticism. I'm not really interested in any feedback. And it is because of our structure and that we can only address areas of clarification. It is a bit of a free-for-all for confident people to come in here and give us our pedigree. Is there any, that was the basis, my question, splitting it to a presentation and having a definite segment for question time. So some of those councillors can say, oh, this information that you're presenting, I just want to know more about this thing you said. And quite often we don't get that opportunity because that whole 10 minutes is taken up by a bit of a monologue, if you know what I mean. So I'm not saying all of our presenters like that, but I have witnessed it in the past. So it's just providing a clear-cut opportunity for that clarification by councillors around accuracy of information, one I could say.
Through you, Chair, I think there's a couple of things in there. There's the time frame in which people get to speak, but then there's the preparatory information that I think that we get the committee secretary to give to the person that's coming presenting, which is also a bit about our standing orders and the conduct that we expect people to display when they're coming to present. So that's the expectations that we get to set up front, and then, you know, back to chairing a good meeting and chairing against those expectations is an opportunity to manage some of the matters that you're talking about there in relation to that. And then, yes, it is all about the questions, and, you know, if you have questions about where people might have got their facts from or how they, you know, how they feel they can justify X, Y, and Z as a question, it's about having sort of good questions up your sleeve to address some of the matters of accuracy that you might have. But, you know, part of this is democracy in action, encouraging public participation as well, and giving people the opportunity to do that.
I think it probably would be a good practice if people are coming in to actually send them 16 through to at least 16.2, which, it does state, you can't question either members of staff, and then the restrictions.
Yep.
At least they have it. They can't say they haven't been given the framework. It's not about
Yep.
restricting their ability to speak to the council, but it's how you do it.
Agreed.
Can I just ask? Sorry.
No, you can go. I'll be fine.
I see standing order 15 in this new guide actually says that the template standing orders provide for a period of up to 30 minutes or longer if agreed to by the chair for members of the public to address the meeting. The template allows for this to be up to 5 minutes each on items that fall within the delegations of the meeting. I suppose that's so we say that each individual is only allowed 5 minutes, but actually we could allow up to 30 minutes if you only had 1 or 2.
Yeah, I think the point is that it's 30 minutes per meeting, so then it depends how many people you have coming to each meeting.
So if you only had 1 person coming, they could say, well, they could read this out and say, well, you've only got me today and I've got up to 30 minutes at night.
Well, it depends, because the next point says speakers can speak for up to 5 minutes. So again, it's again what you want to specify as a time frame per speaker, because whilst you might have someone who's got more freedom on the day, when you think about opportunities maybe across the year, if you happen to be on a day with someone else, you don't get the same opportunity to speak as someone who might have got to speak 6 weeks prior.
This particular item, though, is talking about the time frame to prepare advice, as opposed to.
There's 2 elements to it.
Right.
There is the speaking time, and
Right.
then there is actually preparing the information if we needed to actually prepare advice.
Just a little bit off topic, but it's probably in relation to standing orders and just the experience of the LTP and such like. Is there going to be some AI assistance at some point to support councillors when we have people come in and things aren't quite factual, and we spend but you can't really keep up because you're thinking on your feet and you don't really have an opportunity to correct it. Is there any thought process going into that?
Nope.
Because I don't see that problem getting any smaller.
No, well, this is part of the broader societal issues that we have about misinformation and disinformation around the table. So, not around the table, out there in society. This is
We can
into
burn
this.
a lot of time dealing with that as a big life frustration.
Well, I think there is. What are the ways and means that you can deal with it? So 1, you've got the opportunity to ask the questions around the table, but then 2, what opportunities present themselves afterwards to verify facts and information, and then be able to respond, whether that's through media, whether that's either directly through a letter, through different ways and means. There's I understand the problem you're trying to solve. The question is, can we, and is it appropriate to do that in real time? And we don't always know that AI is going to get it right either, right? Because you get hallucinations with AI too. So that might not be the solution to the problem, but the solution to the problem might be, what do we do after the fact if we have concerns that what's being said isn't perhaps correct in some way, shape or form, and how important is it, and then how should we respond accordingly?
So just on that, the written submissions are publicly visible, aren't they?
When you're having submissions.
Yeah, people are submitting for LTP, for example. So any member of the public could take those and drop them into AI ahead of it to check the written content.
Yeah, there was times in the LTP where it was more verbal.
So that's the written content. If someone deviates significantly from what they've submitted, or if they add some additional information that you suspect is perhaps not reflective of the reality of the situation, there must be an opportunity in the subsequent deliberations, which are also publicly visible, publicly streamed, for us to comment or draw attention to information that was shared during the presentations. As we are doing the deliberation stuff, we could speak to that surely and remind the members around the table and the public who are watching, taking interest. This was stated, this appears not to be the case, and we should take that into account in our deliberation. I would have thought. And so there's an opportunity there, not in the moment, but not too far from that point in time to correct the record if you felt that was important to do so. I would have thought, unless I'm reading the situation.
The problem is it's not in the moment. Modern communications are about the moment. It's about now. It's not about after the fact. If you have to explain yourself, you've already sort of lost. So John's idea, while quite good, could be quite problematic. But people do ring you up, and I'm sure the councillors will say things like, I want to talk about Rule 67, Part 3. You'll know all about that, Peter. Can you recite that? They expect us to know everything. So when, and we don't, we can find out a lot of stuff. We might know a little bit about a lot of things, but not in great detail.
But I think the information may be shared in the moment, but our decisions are not made at the moment.
Yes, I know, but quite often those written statements that come to us before an address from the gallery, the verbal ones will be quite different.
Yeah.
So that's on our feet. We're thinking and preparing questions in our own mind to challenge anything that is not correct, that we don't think is correct.
And I guess the broad observation is that just as council could utilise or deploy AI in support of augmentation of our fact checking, any member of the public can do the same and will hold us accountable based on their own efforts to fact check using AI augmentation. So to me, it seems we've got to prepare for this and anticipate that this will occur. But I think we've got a very deliberate process we step through for a very good reason, and it protects the decision-making integrity of that council by recording, hearing what's presented, discussing it, deliberating it, correcting anything that's wrong before we make our decision and justifying a decision on that basis.
And look, and through you, Chair, sometimes people come and they just want to be listened to. So they might not have facts, they might have views, they might have opinions. Those might be based on facts which are ostensibly true or false in different people's eyes. And, you know, part of your role around the table is, you know, to listen for understanding as well. So sometimes there may or may not be facts that you do want to dispute. You know, these are opportunities for, and I'm thinking about deputations as opposed to submissions, which I think we'd sort of move to, for the, you know, for the public to come and share their thoughts.
That's a very good point, Amy. I'm just looking at this now, so I'm a bit confused. It says in the sheet you've given us that this is on pages 54 to 57, but it's actually on pages 45 and 46. Just
No, on this one.
two
On this-
On this one. Yeah, it's on this one.
Wasn't this the LGNZ one we're talking about?
No, this is the one of that one.
This one, I'm not talking about the LGNZ, this one, the new one.
But I think the page numbers in this table are referring to this, which is the draft. I'm assuming this is the
That's
draft,
the draft
which
template.
has been guided by these.
Oh,
We've seen you, Morris. We've seen you.
It is quite confusing.
Spelling mistakes.
Yeah.
I've gone through it about 50 times.
So we actually haven't had many deputations in the last 3 years. And we've not, I don't know if we had any petitions in the last 3 years. We've only really had public presentations that I can recall. The deputation is relating to an agenda item, and that is going to be covered in that particular meeting. And a member of the public wants to speak to that particular agenda item, because they've got some input that's relevant to consideration of that.
Yeah, that's a deputation.
Yeah.
So that's different to a public
Yeah,
forum.
and so
Somebody coming along
and
and
this
telling us about something that's.
sure. So in this case, we're talking about preparing advice, response to petitions, and deputations.
that's for internal staff. If something's come up and we need to prepare something for you to support
Yeah.
your advice, we've currently got 5 working days to prepare that. Are you happy with the 5 working days? Do you feel that's enough? Are you going to be kind to us and give us more? Are you going to make it shorter? Are you going to make it 3 working days?
Well, I think that's right. If it's something that staff had to prepare a response on, but take, for example, the people that wanted us to do something about the Palestinian situation. So that would, what was that? Was that a deputation or was that a
Public forum.
public forum? Public forum.
Look, the other thing that's available, and we've used it at the ICC and STC, is actually, it is like a deputation to a workshop, which is we're not restricted to that amount of time. Live streamed, so people can still see it. So there's probably there are other tools we can actually use if somebody's coming in to speak to council that is obviously going to be outside that.
Yeah, I agree. The live streaming workshops can change it, spread that load a wee bit, can't it? Be used at that way.
So my thoughts on that particular question are, if you're going to get a deputation because there's something in your agenda that is controversial and it triggers someone to come, then there's a high likelihood that it's triggering more than one individual to come, that they could have a number of individuals who want to speak to it. And so I would be tempted to say, don't extend the time for people who wish to present in a deputation or a petition. Well, yeah, if a petition, then it's going to be well worded in the hard copy they present. So I don't think they should have additional time to speak to that either. So I'm kind of comfortable with the existing timeframes available for members of the public to speak for both deputations and petitions. Would be my thoughts. And of course, if a chair then wants to extend the question time associated with it, there's an opportunity to draw more information out from them.
Anybody else have any views that are contrary to that? Take that as your
Done, haven't you, Nicole?
Yeah, well,
It's been 10
it's-
minutes and then you've extended.
Especially when people have indicated, and we've run out of time, I sort of feel, well, they'd indicated earlier and
Yeah.
we'll use a bit of flexibility to say, well, we'll go with the last one, but you might run over time by a couple of speakers rather than just say, oh, bang, it's, yeah.
I wonder if we probably, the 5-day issue, 5 days prior, seems reasonable. I don't think we want to make it longer because if we're only putting our agenda out a week in advance, 7 days in advance, it only gives folk 2 days to get their thoughts together as well as their documentation and submit it to us. If you made it 7 days, we're actually going to have to then put our agenda out, arguably 10 days out to give people time to. I would have thought. Or am I wrong?
No, I think there is something in standing orders about you. It can't be too far out. It can't be 30 days or whatever. But it can't be less. There's a minimum and a maximum, I think. Because it's too early, people have lost interest or haven't picked up on it. But if it's too short a time, I guess your staff haven't got prepared if the deputations coming in on certain things. And if they just come in and you haven't, staff haven't had time to prepare, it doesn't work that well either. So, yeah.
bearing in mind it's often not the only thing staff are doing. So it's about just striking that right balance.
I'm happy with that, comfortable with that interval,
Status quo.
that 7 day and that 5 day. If someone's got something that's really burning, they will jump to it within that allotted time in a couple of days. Pretty sure of it.
So everyone happy with 5 days? Fiction, 5 days? Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Code of conduct integration with regards to the standing orders. What this is actually about is just, as we go forward, is actually just cross-referencing the code of conduct with the standing orders and just making sure that members agree to abide in relation to both documents working together. And there's an expectation that at the start of the triennium, councils and committees should agree on their protocols of how their meetings should work, including, as an example, because I thought this was a funny example, so just me, whether members are expected to stand when speaking, and if they are, the other thing is whether there's a specified dress requirement for meetings.
Well, yeah, definitely there should be that.
So it's just making
Not
sure we're
very fine,
integrating
Ross.
the two documents together.
No short seal.
I've got money, can't see them over here anyway. I can make them shorts.
I'm not sure standing to speak.
It's just an example.
No reason I say that is I pricked my back yesterday, so not everyone's going to be comfortable quickly leaping to their feet.
So what's the actual
I think it's
decision?
respect.
There isn't
Stephen.
really a decision, it's just highlighting that
Yeah.
we should be
Oh, not
aware
every
that
time, no.
sorry,
Sorry.
that the code of conduct needs to integrate with the standing orders so that one document's really reflecting the other and they work together nicely. It's just actually highlighting the fact that we need to be aware of that the standing orders doesn't say something really contradictory to the code of conduct.
Yeah.
It's just making sure that they are working together.
Which one do you lock in first? Standing orders, then just make any tweaks to your code of conduct? The other way
So
around?
the code of conduct, we've just done the code of conduct and adopted the new code of conduct. And so effectively the code of conduct comes first.
Would be quite difficult to stand when you speak, like you're gonna have to grab the laptop, aren't you, really? Like, I don't know, that's a logistical thing.
So you did that quite well then. Okay, so our final slide, what I've actually done here is I've actually just, I had a bit of a thought around if we actually go and adopt these new standing orders, that there are quite a few supporting protocols that we probably need to actually address to actually support the standing orders, both for staff and for elected members. And I've just actually given you an example of some of the ones that we should perhaps be drafting and writing, which I think would actually really assist the incoming council. With regards to the meeting preparation and notice protocol, that's more of an internal protocol for internal staff around actually how we notify the meetings and when we actually pop them up on public notice. With regards to the casting vote declaration, it records the council's decision on whether to adopt or remove a casting vote, and it's an update the internal documents and actually induction material that come for the new council. Doing a protocol for our audio visual participation. So if we do decide that we're actually going with the new standing orders and that if you're actually attending via audio visual, that it is part of the quorum, that we actually have a very firm protocol around that and how you will present yourself on your audio visual meeting, and that your camera will be on, that your speaker will be on, all those different things that we actually need to have with regards to that. Public participation protocol, so that's actually setting up all that stuff around petitions and deputations and people presenting, so that our people in the public actually have a really good protocol and actually understand what we expect from them. The motions and amendment handling protocol, so it's just really detailing what that is and what decision we actually went with or option we went with, and there is at the back of the standing orders template the flow charts for each option, so it would be including the flow chart. Looking at a code of conduct alignment protocol, just making sure that we've actually stated how it does align So it's nice and clear to everybody. And then the final one is the training and induction protocol. That's actually about integrating the standing orders for the new elected members, making sure that we do address the training and induction around standing orders and code of conduct, and making sure that everything's in lovely plain English, and we have perhaps some quick reference guides around standing orders.
And to the point that you made when we discussed induction, that, induction is not just a one-stop shop, that we've got, refresher training that goes on through the training as well.
And that is the end of my presentation.
Excellent. So we made some decisions through that, but there were some earlier items that I feel that perhaps we did not have decisions on. So can we just go back and have, unless I wasn't listening properly and I missed the decisions or the direction that we made.
I might just ask about the very first one, then, the right to attend by audio or audio visual. And the reason I'm interested in this is two parts. But one was that there's a requirement to request to attend by audio visual 2 days in advance. And I'm just thinking of situations where there could be a bridge washed out during an event which may occur within that 48-hour period. So I'm just wondering if there was.
So there is, I believe, in the standing orders template.
The other one, setting it aside, the other one was I did hear of another council in a different part of the country where a member, I think, attended in person about 2 meetings in person the entire training. And so their default was to be online. So they actually never got to meet that councillor hardly. And that would concern me if that became the default for councillors in the future. I'm just wondering, is there a sense there, do we need to kind of constrain, in a traineum you'd expect that not to be the standard?
And I would believe that would be addressed through your protocol.
Right. So
That would actually address that through the protocol, and we'd actually say in the protocol what the expectations were around that.
It might also be in your code of conduct.
It just seemed terribly unhealthy to council cohesion to have an individual who chose to, their standard mode of operating was to attend online.
Was that chap over in London? It was on the tally.
Yeah,
He's part of the council in New Zealand, but he's living in London.
Wow.
You certainly want some protocols around that sort of thing. I think. Otherwise, you have somebody who just sits at home all the time. And the reality is you don't have the same influence online. You can hear everything. But the other one I was on, your induction, I'd recommend within 6 months to revisit. It's an awful lot to take on board. You have the Christmas break, etc. But I think it's really good to have a refresh on code of conduct and those sorts of things because with new people.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the induction. Is that it could be quite a blunt discussion about how does people want to run? What are their expectations, and really set the tone. It can be reviewed in due course, but if everybody's in the room with the induction, that might be agreed. No, chair's got to be really tough on wandering and be straight to the point. Or it could be saying, okay, the first 6 months, there's new people. Let's be a lot more flexible. Let's review it. But I think there needs to be a real session on the actual chairing, even the committees and all that. And so everybody's in the room understands if they get a bollocking from someone or the chair or something, so it's time to sit down. They know that was the agreement at the beginning.
I think the point to remember about the joining audio visual as well is the positives and the opportunity it creates, because it creates the opportunity for people who might not have otherwise been able to attend the meeting in person to be able to at least participate in some way, shape or form. But there's a limit to that, I guess, in terms of being able to develop the relationships, which is your point, Phil, I think, and create that platform on which to have those discussions that you really need to have either in person or when you're having difficult conversations, you're doing it on top of an established relationship that you've been able to have and maintain. So I think there's a balance to be had, but you can have that discussion between you, I think, around what what you'd like to set for yourselves as a council.
So there's no, you can't force the person to turn up. There's no rules of that. They can join online
It says that.
all the time if they want. No,
I think so.
legally,
I
I'm
just
just
need to-
asking
I
legally.
just need to cross
I
reference.
think they missed 3 consecutive meetings.
Well, that's apologies.
Yeah, but
That
it's.
you can't, you don't need to accept apologies after a while. Like if they keep on not attending, but I'm just knowing, is there a law? As long as they zoom in,
Question, I
there
can
can be a
find out.
blank screen up there, not involved, say I'm there.
So in the standing orders,
Yeah,
It is.
well, I'm just
Equally,
saying.
you could be in the room and on your phone.
Yeah.
And technically, you're
Sorry, I
physically
didn't
present,
understand
but
you
yeah,
there
sorry,
before.
I'm not having a go at anybody, but you know, that's not uncommon. I'm not saying around this table, but that's not uncommon,
Blank
being
screen
physically
here anyway.
present and not listening, so, you know.
Maybe some of us can
Bring it up.
multitask.
Fine.
No comment.
What
Maybe-
constitutes an attendance? Just showing yourself up there, or quite often, you know, so how far through the meeting do you have to go through before you are part of the meeting?
Good question, don't know, can find out.
so in the standing orders, it's quite clear that the chair has the options to actually end an electronic link. So if the member's not behaving, the member's not doing what the member's meant to be doing, the chair can actually stop the link effectively. Like,
Sorry, can't hear you.
And remember, part of these standing orders from standing order 13 is there needs to be a request to the chair to attend via audio visual link. So it's not a given that you'll be able to actually attend that way.
Well, I'm not sure if that's right. It says 13.7 says that people have got a right to attend by audio visual. I think we need something, or 2 things about people playing and listening. But the other thing, I think, could we have something in there that says, you know, members are expected to attend in person, you know, unless exceptional circumstances arise.
Prior arrangement.
Something like that.
Probably the other thing you've got to watch during COVID, we've had a regional sector meeting and Marion Hobbs was chair of IRC and she said, oh, it's wonderful, I can mute my whole council. So you don't want to go the other way either. So,
And then there's a question on, you know, does the camera have to be on? You know, like it's,
I've done Zoom, we did Zoom meetings and all.
well, you know, you turn
cameras
the
are
camera
off.
off and go flip the
Yeah.
camera on.
Yeah.
People use connectivity as an excuse around that, then if they put their camera on, it'll. So I
So
don't
that would be the protocol would attend to that. Protocol would specify, have your camera on,
Yes.
no less than 3 cans of beer in the lunch.
Well, I don't want to see people eating sausage rolls when it's on the thing, so you can turn the camera off for that.
no, it was that kid on seeing David Nelson Pope stand up and he had no trousers on when he thought the camera was off.
You're right there, we don't want that.
What was the guidance we were seeking?
It's really just actually to note the fact that standing orders are there.
Right,
And the fact that if we're going to go with audio visual, that we do need to write a protocol around it.
yeah, okay.
I think it's really important that we actually go down that track.
So we can take some of the feedback that we've got and draft something up in relation to that protocol for you to have a look at based on.
So
that.
actually, if you go to the guide that you've got in front of you on page 19, there is a draft protocol around audio visual means. And that would be a starting point for us.
Yeah. Guide, page 19.
May give you a bit of a guide around what we can do and what we can put in a protocol.
Yeah.
Looks to cover a number of the things that we've been discussing.
Including wearing stripes.
I've got to wear appropriate clothing in a voice.
With stripes and small patterns.
Right.
They can become distorted on the camera.
Oh, just let me know.
You got spots today, mate.
I've got spots, yeah. Got my leopard spots.
Did we
Okay,
give you
Chris.
guidance though on the chair's casting vote question?
Oh, can we finish the AV and then we'll move on to let's finish, are we, so,
Yes,
Yeah.
I think we need something in here about the use of phones and computers, which are on matters that are not related to the meeting. And you said we don't use it much, but we do. There's lots of people here that play on the internet and look at their emails and look at something else that's not related to the meeting at all without mentioning any names. And we don't say anything about it. I think it's not really good. I think we should be paying attention to what's going on at the meeting. And it's going to be very hard to, to police something up to us, really. But I think that we need to say this is what's expected.
I think it's going a wee bit too far. So I use my phone quite a bit when meetings are going on and people say things and I hear things. It's doing a quick bit of research on what people say. It's my own sort of what we were talking about earlier. So
That's okay.
in topics that come up, I will Google and
Yeah.
I see others do that with Paul and Robert too, and others do that. I think it really adds the discussion. So,
Well, if it's related to the meeting, that's fair enough, and you're trying to find out so you can respond more appropriately or with more information, then that's good. But if it's not related to the meeting and you're getting a bit bored with the meeting and you start texting your wife or something, then no, I don't think that's right.
The challenge becomes how do you police
Well, you
that?
can't police it, that's right. It has to be up to us. We have to say to people, look, this is what you are at the meeting, all know what I'm saying.
yeah,
And I think some people might get a phone call, they need to answer, but they should actually get up and excuse themselves, leave the room and do it, so it's not, they're not trying to just
Well,
sort of
no, I
text
think
away.
you should turn your phone off. If
Oh,
you get a
no,
meeting-
Morris.
The
No,
re-
it's
the
not
re-
cheap
the
down
reality
the
is,
road.
Morris, not all of us are in a stage of life where we have a responsibility to stop at the door. And that is reality for some of us. We have stuff that we have to keep doing, and you got people reaching out to you that literally will affect you when you walk out of the room if you don't attend to it there and then. So
if I've got
This is
cheese out on the
this
road,
is-
I want to
yeah,
know
this is
straight
the-
away.
this is a reality of
Fitting council.
fitting council into a life. You don't turn up to get paid for it and get rich. You're actually donating your time when you look at the
Yeah.
commitment it takes over what you actually could be achieving outside of council. And so there has to be a balance.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, but if it was 30 years ago, we wouldn't be able to do that.
No,
We didn't have a phone.
but we didn't.
Would we? We would be here at the meeting, we wouldn't have computers. We
was
wouldn't have-
30 years
we'd have
ago, we
paper
had
stuff.
80-year-old men here. So
We've got a
true, true, right, true.
Hang on.
Yeah.
What's changed?
Oh, don't.
Don't listen to him, you're all right around the table. How dare you, John?
Through you, Chair. Look, I think this is a code of conduct matter, and this is an opportunity for you to have a conversation, but like we were talking about earlier about how you want to show up in the room and what's important, and you can have that when whoever's around the table next, determines and discusses that. But I think there is, and I can't point to it right now because I didn't bring it with me, but there is something in the code of conduct around expecting that you will read your papers, you'll be prepared, and you'll be present in the room. So, accepting that, there is life that goes on and emergencies happen and all the rest of that, you'll have to just sort of have a look at that and navigate that. And, it's either a problem or it's not. So, and then if it's a problem, there's ways and means of, having those conversations about the impact of that going forwards. Right, so can we move on from audio visual, noting the points that we've made that you've made around the table, that we'll have a look at a protocol to sit us alongside the attending online.
Can we just that question about what makes an attendance at one point?
Yep,
Thank you.
I've got, yep. I've got that, and we will come back with some guidance on that. Okie doke, what was the second one that we filled?
I'm just returning
casting votes.
In my mind, it seems to me prudent to have that as a tool up your sleeve for the chair who's usually going to be appointed because they're experienced, got good judgment, and considering the needs of the region, to make that call if it is something that requires a statutory decision to be made.
Sorry,
Let me be clear, he has been in the round of voting at the beginning, right? And it's tied.
Yep.
Then he makes the call.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay,
okay.
it's 2 votes.
That's fine.
But just to have that available to the chair, to me, it would be seldom used, I would imagine. It would be only used in a really kind of dire and unusual, unique situation. But at least, and the chair could choose not to deploy it.
It's motivation for the chair to actually work the meeting well to get some more concession on the decision. Otherwise, it's going to put the chair in an awkward situation every meeting. So it actually does drive the chair to perform better, I believe, because they don't want to be in that situation.
Is there a need to specify that if there is a tied vote, is there an out for the chair to say, actually, he has the option to not, he or her does not need to deploy that casting vote? They felt that it is a situation that requires to further.
I'd have to check on that, but I believe that they don't have to use the casting vote, that you can actually ask for further information and re-debate the situation and bring it back.
So our current standing order, and if you have a look on your table, it's the second bullet point. It's only currently supposed to be used when you're up against a statutory deadline, a time frame, and you need to be able to make a decision within that statutory time frame. So I don't know if that's also a possibility, being able to put that caveat around it. So that's the first question. And then the second question is, or do you want to take that caveat away and have it more open as to how and when that casting vote would be used? Just reflecting back to the initial conversation you had, which talked about, democratic mandate around decision making for certain matters.
Like in the past, and the LTP is a good case in point, that if you miss a deadline, there's a cost with all or anything else. And that's we haven't had to use it, but that was one of the discussions. If we had that situation, it could be used, but you still don't have to use it. I mean, when I was chairing, if we had something like that, with a time frame, I really could say, let's come back and discuss it next week. More information. If people are that polarised, it's not a good look going forward. But you can get some councils who are equally split, diametrically opposed, and that could put a chair into the thing of having to do it quite often, which also I don't think is a good idea. So it's just, But it's but you're right. It's an option in that situation. But my personal belief is it's an option one a chair of a regional council should not use unless there's an imperative for it.
You've illustrated that over the years. You've shown that.
Yeah.
And
So
really,
soft skills.
And a really cunning chair could just exclude anyone who's online to make sure there wasn't a tied vote. So
I've just seen what the actual specific reading
That's right.
it has. I just wondered if
Like
the
they
reading was
qualify
can or
things
could, as opposed to
must.
has a deliberate. So that the 19.3, which is page 57, the chairperson or any other person presiding at a meeting has a deliberative vote, and in the case of an equality of votes, has a casting vote. So that looks like it's got a legislative basis, though.
So you have 2 votes. Sound good, yeah.
So what's the option here?
So we can still put the note in around the statutory, that it's a statutory requirement that we need to actually make a decision on something that's actually got a time frame. We can still include that.
I think it's fair.
to put the
Agree.
qualifier in. Yep. Does
Go.
anybody else have views on that? Retain the qualifier that we've got?
I need to be used then. So if it can't be used, if it's not that critical, then yeah, it has to come back to another meeting.
It's kind of like in the case of an emergency, break this piece of glass and pull your casting boat out. Like activating the fire alarm kind of thing, I would have thought.
Yeah, so it's not something you would do normally.
Put it in a big glass case on the wall.
The red light goes.
Get the little bell.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Are you happy with that direction? Still
Well,
thinking about it?
yeah.
What's your preference? Are your
Well,
preference
what
not to activate that option?
What I said earlier was that if it was tied vote and then the chairman should vote to keep the status quo. Because if you say, well, we can't decide today, and we're going to come back to it next month or 3 months' time, what could have changed?
So if you've got a statutory, if you've got a deadline, you've got to make a decision.
Yeah. In that case,
So I think that's,
Putting budgets together and things like that, agreeing is annoying. Some people have got to do things, whether you like it or not.
I think including that caveat provides the prompt and reminder as to why we have this in the standing orders.
Because in essence, Morris, if a decision can't be made, then in effect you are preserving the status quo until you make, until you come back to the decision. So the standing order doesn't actually say that, but it infers that via the approach, unless the qualifiers invoked around the statutory timeframe.
Well, wouldn't you have to say that then? Because if you have an equality of votes, then you haven't made a decision. So I say that implies that that implies really that you haven't agreed with the status quo and you haven't agreed with the change either. So you're in limbo.
But if you haven't agreed, to change the status quo, therefore the status quo prevails, does it not? Just in logic terms.
Any,
I suppose so.
I'd say any discussion, if it got to that point, there would have been a lot of discussion.
Yeah.
Almost get a feeling that it was coming to that point, you know. It's not like all of a sudden we turn up at a meeting and we got one vote and everybody goes, oh, half say no and half. We usually have had workshops and if it was quite a contentious discussion, there'd be a lot of scrapping going on before the vote. And there'd be a pretty good indication that we've got a split council. How do we, you know, can we work this out, guys? How do we work this out?
Saying we're unlikely to be surprised.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know. Okay, we've been pretty good around here, but I'm just trying to think what would make this happen. Okay, been the odd one, just one person voted no. Principle, that's cool. But you know, you might have plan changes or something that may really affect the people with two different complete views and those things. But in that would have been a lot of work done before we come up to that vote.
I mean, there's other councils that have gone through this and actually had a conflict of interest because they're affected in you know, a split vote. I think it's a good leverage in there if it ever happened, to say, look, this is going to cost the ratepayers money if somebody will change their mind. Normally you'd have a few days, you normally wouldn't be right on the day. But at least it would put pressure on some people to say, well, maybe we'll think again if we're going to actually waste. So it's not a bad tool to have in your pocket that you normally won't ever have to use, but rather than having nothing. And
can I just sorry, I've just picked up a bit of the conversation. I've been on the phone. I just want to say we can go to every scenario about every bit of risk.
Yeah.
The tone will be set by the new chair, and not only by that, and Alistair mentioned earlier about the senior councillors, and there's 3 here that I see that are coming back for sure. They will set the tone. It's just like those senior people in the rugby team set the tone for the team. And that's going to be important in the first 6 weeks. This is how we operate, and you demonstrate that. But we do have to have a safety net. We could go down the rabbit hole in every little thing too. So whether or not we want to support that level, I'm not sure.
So am I taking it that we put the qualifier in and we move to the next
Yes.
item? Great, thank you, everybody. Right, what's
So I've
next?
got a phone home too soon, so.
My phone's gonna ring shortly.
So it was the updated framework on our motions, which I think there was direction to stay with option B.
Yep.
And then there was our time around deputations and petitions, and we decided to Rebecca to repeat it back to us.
To stay with the current time for speakers and also to stay with the 5 days prior.
Does that, well, I'm just feeling slightly guilty because we didn't ask staff if that was an overly challenging timeframe to prepare.
Look, I think, again, actually to Peter's point around, you know, we could talk about every single scenario. I think it depends. You know, sometimes it might be enough, sometimes it might not be enough. Can't help that, unders and overs, it seems to strike me as being reasonable. To your point, Phil, you know, it's not like we get hundreds and thousands of deputations, and we'll do our best in the time that we have available. And it aligns to your point, I think, as well with the, you know, when we should be getting agendas out as well, so. Yeah. Okay. We didn't talk about workshops and briefings.
So they were just notes around content that's actually in the guidance around workshops and briefings.
Okay. So that's just an FYI for you. That's that part of the table, just saying
Just additional information.
workshops and briefings.
Probably what I would say about that piece around workshops and briefings is that we have decided to live stream workshops. We can readdress that and reconsider that going forward if we want to.
Relative to the topic.
Yeah, look, I think that's the point. We've got a bit of continuous improvement to do, to think about, you know, work with you on how best to get information to you and whether workshops are appropriate, whether briefings are appropriate, or whether, you know, you're getting, I don't know, a document to read at home or a little video, and I've been experimenting with some of those from time to time. So that's just, you know, just recognising that there are different types of meetings that have different types of democratic structures that sit around them, and, you know, and different ways in which we can impart information.
You dropped some paper as you were packing things up, John. I'm not sure if it's important or if it's unimportant.
Oh, it's your long paper, it's all right.
Just one observation is that sometimes the mode of workshopping that we've enjoyed has been very productive when you go to breakout teams. That's a nightmare to try and track when you're watching online. The question that emerged for me is, does that suggest we have to modify our workshop mode or activities to optimize them for the benefit of anyone who's observing online, or can we kind of just accept that that's, unfortunately, there's going to be occasions where we want to workshop in a certain way of workshopping that's going to be challenging for others to follow?
My gut feel response is that it's the latter, but actually the challenge and the opportunity is how can we think about workshopping in a way. Often, like, mixed mode is really difficult, even when you're running a meeting, right? So it's either better that everybody's online or everybody's in the room. And that's not to say if one person needs to be at home, everybody needs to be at home, but we could give some thought to, you know, if it's only going to be an hour, is it better for you to all to come into the room for that hour, or can we get clever about saying stay where you are, or come in if you like, but please engage like you are on the screen today, and we're going to run this in an online format.
You just try and lump it all together, wouldn't you, for the week? Just, you know, run it after a meeting or something, because the workshops, really, you do need to be in the room. That's the reality. And so it just makes sense to shuffle that around so you end up with 2 or 3 things in one go.
Yeah, we can see. I think it's. I think there's opportunities that maybe pilot or test some different approaches and get feedback on those.
And I guess I was talking about the live streaming it to the public,
Mm.
not necessarily accommodating online participation by members who can't be
Yeah.
here in person.
So, for example, running up to our LTP decision, we may have 15 to 17 workshops. Do we have to live stream them all, or could we have one in the middle that would, a live streaming workshop every 3rd or 4th workshop or something like that, or one at the end to tie everything in? Say, on a continuum of 15, we have 2 public workshops or even 3 that could allow for that bus stop type session around the room. I don't think we should be modifying our decision-making behaviour if that's the best way to conclude a decision or a series of decisions, so we can accommodate live streaming.
I think there's a couple of things. One, we should try and be open as much as possible. So, if it's appropriate that workshops are live streamed, then so be it. And if there's reasons why we need not to live stream them, then we should. I think there's a question and a comment before we talk about which workshops are live streamed or not, and that is, should they be workshops or should they be briefings, or is there just some way in which you need to get, how best to impart some information? Because briefings are typically an exchange of information. Workshops, we're seeking some sort of direction from you. There's more interaction and direction required, and then meetings themselves are where the decisions are actually made. So that's for us to be really clear about what it is that we need from you and what you need from us in order to be able to determine the right mode and format.
I think Alice has been waiting patiently.
Yeah, interestingly, I go back to when I was at university, and that's where I look at this, what's going on here. That if we do a group of things together, we get a hell of a lot more out of it, and run through and do the workshops, tidy that area up, and then go to the next one. Because what happens is we do a workshop, and probably a month or 2 months later, we end up doing something associated with that. Well, it's in my view, but I'm pretty dumb, it's a waste of time. Because if we could get these packages, make it work, and then move on, we will all understand it better.
I think, Alistair, that's probably something we have to do better around our LTP situation, is structure those 15 to 17 workshops, and then every so often revise the decisions we've already made in the previous 5, and then move on to the next ones. It's something we've got to get better at, and actually start the key staff. I'm just saying the key staff around that LTP stuff is important. We'll be working with them a lot. We need to bring them into the fold, into the room with us, so they get to know the people. I think that's really important. That's probably a discussion for another day.
John, then Jeremy.
Yeah, just on the workshops, and I could imagine some frustration from staff. For whatever reason, there are times that councillors can't attend workshops, and then you do see when we get to deliberations that starts showing itself. Can there be a process where we can, rather than burning a heap of it at the councillor's time, we go, right, we're just going to park that, and we're going to bring you up, that councillor that missed that workshop, take them aside, bring them up to speed where the workshop landed, because, Jesus, it's frustrating. You spend all this time workshopping, and then you're getting into deliberations, and you've got this time being burnt on. So I'd really like to see that tidied up.
It's a knowledge management challenge for the organisation. If we've got a good solution for the organisation, it would allow individuals to tap into and access that knowledge management solution, or with the assistance of a fellow councillor, even to bring them up to speed on what we missed, where things have evolved to in terms of thinking.
There's reasons last time we run out of time.
Jeremy.
It's because we're down in the workshops and things. I mean, my probably frustration, I mean, is actually not doing enough in a day. We've got very busy lives. I'm down here, I want to do as much. I'll sit here till 6 o'clock if need I can start. But I have sat here at 6 o'clock with Lynn Smith in the past. But it's even like this today, buggers my day. You know, I'd rather just, if I'm down here at 8 o'clock, you know, meetings start at 10, let's get the garden past 8, get on with it when they start and do it, you know, work till 4. I mean, we're tired, but at least we know we don't have to come for a half a day tomorrow and the next day. And I think, and also get stuff done, you know, that's, I think, I don't know whether other people are feeling, but these are, as you say, we've got other jobs. And sometimes I think some of the changes, you know, we set our meetings a bit later, didn't have consideration for us as councils around management. Not we weren't talked to about that. And so, well, I wasn't. And for us, I'm travelling there at distances and that, I didn't like it. I just said it's just stuff on the day. My day's buggered once I've got a council day. So especially when we were trying to, we're just trying to fit a lot into the day. Sorry, I'm just
Peter than Alistair.
sorry. Whether we should be delving into that, I don't know what we're talking about.
Just talking about those workshops and that LTP stuff, I think was really quite important. I was advocating pretty strongly at the very end to have a couple of sessions to recap going back, because we forgot a lot of stuff. What was our key driving principles right at the start? And maybe not just to recap at the end, because it's such a long process halfway through to recap, like I was saying, the previous workshops. The other thing with workshops, we quite often bring people in the room that aren't elected officials too, and we will have to manage that with their consent to be on camera and be live streamed. We don't want that to be a barrier that people don't show up because of that. So that's something to be on.
And a recap for them too.
That's right. Yeah, because it is a long process and you do forget the decisions you've made, and giving us time. But I can't stress enough how those key staff that sit in those tables that are with us in those 15 to 16 workshops, that they've got to get to know us and we've got to get to know them. And it is a tough job. And there's councils around this country that do this stuff really well and efficiently, and it's usually experienced staff members that have got experience in doing LTPs after one, after the other, after they know exactly where to go to and what drawers to open. So I'm just a general comment.
Thank you.
Alistair.
I think it was me. We have some extremely intelligent people in our management team. Now, I look at that when I am sitting in here, and there's 4 or 3 or 4 of them sitting there. Can we change the structure of our committee so we've got one person that has to sit there rather than having 3? Because it must take a hell of a long time, a lot of time out of their day that they're not really getting things. And then if there needs to be integration with that again, that happens at their management level, which is probably more productive than it is them sitting around here watching us discuss things. I don't know, just to think about that. I've been thinking about it for a while because I've just been landed with a bill for $8,000 that I've got to pay Environment Southland, which is nothing to do, it's all about normal ongoing things. So we've got to do something, and I've only got 20 hectares. But however, that's my thoughts.
Just a couple of points. When you're doing those workshops, you're normally giving staff a steer. Hopefully they're going to come back in 2 or 3 weeks' time with something written up. So you've got to be sort of patient. You throw a whole lot of stuff around, and then we often say, have you got clear direction? Yes, we have, and they go away. And the other one is, pack as much as you can into the day, but you've got to have some breaks. I know some days, if you're doing a 12-hour day, by the time you drive there and back, at the end of the day, you may not be making good decisions. So it's just getting that balance right.
I think, like if I could just reflect back to you, look, I hear all of that, and I think, I come back to the point I made earlier, which is what is the best way that we can be efficient with the use of your time in terms of how we do briefings, how we get information to you, when we get you in here, making sure that we don't have, so as much as we might fill a day, maybe a better use of that time would be meeting in the morning and workshop in the afternoon, because sometimes if you've got, to Nicole's point, we've got two big committees or two meaty agendas to get through, and we've done a morning and afternoon meeting, you've, bolted your lunch, or you've been eating it in here, you're late at the other end of the day, decision making may or may not be compromised, and then there's the health and safety aspect of those of you who've got a bit of a drive to get home at the end of the day, driving time as well. So yeah, just we can put some thought into how we better manage that for you. But you also have we can have a conversation with the new council about how they would like to structure their time as well, and try and meet everybody's needs in relation to how they might like that to happen. And that can also be a conversation about perhaps what your committee structure looks like, and so how and when you are meeting and on what matters.
Can I just say, John made an earlier decision, which I think would be really important. And I think that was around putting meeting place setters, putting everything around these induction right at the very start. So new councillors know, we all know that we're required, because you can come in on voting day and, oh my God, I never expected this. Who's going to do this and that? And there's quite a bit of flustering, and you may not make every workshop, but those first ones are just so important.
I think I emailed the other day, we're going to put some thought around that. Got a little bit of work around the elections, just that's where we're focusing in on doing this. So we're working on the induction, and I'm really happy to do that. We could send something out.
That information couldn't go out to the current, candidates.
Yeah, I don't
That's what I'm kind of thinking.
I don't see why
Because
it
it
couldn't.
really then makes them understand.
Yeah. This is, and I think you fed that back to us when we had the mid-year review last year. That would be helpful. Like, that's sitting with me as that sounds like a really good thing to do. We just haven't got the dates in the diary just yet, but we'll do that.
And we don't even need the topic, just as long as they know there's a
Yes,
placeholder.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You could stress how important those first few get-togethers are, and once they get there, people start to realise that how important they are by being there.
Can I ask, this has been a workshop and we have provided guidance.
Yes.
A set of guidance has emerged from this. The likes of Lyndall, who couldn't be here, she might be interested to review what that guidance was. Is this the kind of instance where there might be a summary of bullet points which would be available to councillors to review within a few days, so that those who couldn't attend or those who wanted to circle back could find it relatively easily, or have it emailed out?
Yeah, look, I think so. I think as a start for 10, we could just resend this with maybe a column where we landed on the side, and then there's like in any last requests for people who weren't here. Does that sound like a plan? Yep. Fantastic. Any more for any more?
I'd just like to say I really think this is valuable, this more professionalism and the way we operate. I'm really quite interested in, because I didn't know, I was fortunate enough that I've got friends that are in the commercial world and on boards and stuff like that, and I've sort of known how they operate and the expectations for them when they walk through the door of that entity. They have a duty of care for their entity and their staff. And as those commercial aspects, like I've just described, does that transfer to the council? So when the councillor comes to this table, they have a duty of care for the entity and the entity's staff. Am I pushing the barrow out from that? Is that a discussion point?
Oh, look, I think it is, as we have continued to evolve and grow, we've been able to build the democracy team to provide some more support around the table. And, one thing that I think, with my HR hat on, knowing and understanding roles and responsibilities is the key to everything. And the more we can do to make that explicit and, support you all to hold your different frames of reference when you're having your conversations around the table is really helpful, and actually that might be a really good conversation to have.
Well, I think it could be a good
early on.
determination. Are we,
What's your role? What do you
are we,
think your role is?
as a councillor, are we a governor?
You are, yeah, you're our governance.
Okay, so that gives determination to that point. So that could be something to work on for next term.
Well, if I could support Peter there, I think that's really good, Peter, what you say, and exactly what you mean by duty of care. From what John said before, I am in a privileged position. I live 10 minutes away from here. I haven't got another job. I have a biased view. I can devote, almost my whole entire life to doing this thing. And you guys can't do that. And you have to drive an hour and a half to get here, and so do you, and Nickel. It's a difficult job. In some ways, I was just thinking then that the whole structure of this organisation, the councillor side of it, is actually not right. It's not. It's too tough on people like you. You have to come here for a meeting like this. All of you guys. Paul is 2 hours away. I don't know what you can do to fix it. As Peter says, that needs to be recognised and somehow make the most of the precious time that you guys have got to be here. I don't know what Al was talking before about senior staff waiting here in the meeting, but I think that's probably important to do that so that they can hear what we are saying and incorporate that back into our the policies that drive this organisation. So that wasn't
The reality is we all bring something different though, and that's important. Like say, we all bring something different because they're all different ages and stages, and so it's just how do we work with that as a team? That's probably the biggest way to get the most efficiency out of our governance.
And let's recognise too, this is not an easy job. I talked about the duty of care to the entity and the staff, but also we have a large group of what you would call shareholders, i.e. ratepayers, that are pushing us in a direction too that may not be conducive to that duty of care to the organisation and the staff. And it is very difficult of managing all those competing forces. Maybe that needs to be talked about in a clear way. And it isn't easy, is it? We've all experienced that. So, bring it on. That's what I say.
You've actually got a wider set of stakeholders as you consider yellow-eyed penguins going functionally extinct in Otago. Then we've actually got an environment that are actually we're meant to be our key stakeholder.
We've taken that to another level, Phil. I'm
Right.
not disagreeing, certainly not disagreeing with that.
Shall we close
was-
the meeting? Sorry,
Just
Jeremy.
a quick one, I thought Morris was going to say you have to be within 10 k's of this building to be allowed to be on the council. I thought there might be a wee bit of backlash to that.
I was going to add, you guys are in a difficult position because you've got this other stuff to do and you've got a long way to travel. But we really need you here at this table because you provide so much valuable insight into what's going on that I don't have. So,
But look, I think when you put your hand up for the role, it costs you money at times. When you say you're going to do the role, you've got to do it.
Yeah.
And you don't want to, the tyranny of distance should not mean that people can't actually take part. I mean, in a democratic society, anybody should be able to put the hand up. But when you take that oath, you've actually got to change your life a wee bit, and sometimes there's a cost with it. And, okay, we're about good?
Yep, close the meeting.
We've got people. Oh, sorry.
Once we're off, are we off?
Oh, yeah.
Let me tell us how you really feel now.
And we can all actually, if everyone can leave the meeting